There you go. Welcome everybody. I'm Chuck Offenburger from the Board of Directors of the Greene County Historical Society, and this is Jerry Roberts and I right there. Have been for half a dozen years and hosted history chats at the Greene County Fair. And that's where we are right now. And we
have two roses between two thorns.
Yes, this is the very shy Roger Eggeter, our Executive Director of the Historical Society, and Holly Roberts, Jerry's wife, is right here. And our topic now is, we really don't have a panel discussion this time like we often do, where we have somebody with expertise up here. What we have today is a gathering of anybody who's interested in the arts and in several different ways. I'll explain that for just a second. As we thought about this program, one thing, and we're the Historical Society, so one thing I'm intrigued about is who can tell us about important people in the arts over the history of Greene County? Who do we know going way back who is involved? And then also, who were people that excelled in the arts, and that we may have published records of, or poems, or songs, or anything like that. We want to know that. We want to hear any of your own pieces that you brought with you, whether it's an excerpt of some essay or a book, or a poem, a favorite poem, whether you've written or somebody else has written it. But it's just a general discussion on the arts. And we have several people here who have represented different phases of the arts, and we welcome you all. So let's throw it open. I moved to Greene County. My wife Carla and I moved here in 2004. And when we got here, we went to, once we were coming down in the spring, in the spring, to paint and get our house ready to go and stuff. But we were still living in Storm Lake. And one Sunday afternoon, we were down here, and we had noticed, we were buying the newspapers when we come to town. We noticed there was going to be a poetry reading at the Historical Museum on Sunday afternoon. And I said to Carla, I said, well, let's knock off with the painting and go up and see what that's like. And we went up there, and we were both just knocked out. I still remember the crowd at something being like 40 or 50 people on a Sunday afternoon for poetry reading. And these people got up and started reading poems, and I think Lou Blanchfield, I think you may have been there. I think Holly you read that day, and Tina, I can't remember, Kim Tolliver, whether you read, you may have. And I thought, oh my God, if this is a town where we're having poetry readings, draw 40 people on Sunday afternoon, I want to live there. But as good as the women reading that day were, the highlight in my mind was I got to hear Lawrence Geisler to Casey at the Bat. And I just was totally intrigued by that. And then soon after that, we became aware of who Alice Nips, am I saying the last name right? Who Alice Nips was. Did not get to know her well, but knew of her interest in the arts and her work. And then after that, we started meeting other painters and poets and singers and of all kinds of music. And I thought, oh my gosh, this town, this county, has an incredibly strong art space. I mean, really, I think unusual. And so we were thrilled to be part of this and have been ever since. Jerry Roberts, you said you had a limerick or two.
We didn't bring it.
Oh, you didn't bring it? Okay.
We found only one copy. And what happened was, the coven, and we'll talk about this later, was meeting upstairs, all the women of the coven, the poetry coven, and I was in the basement. And there's no facility down there. So I walked up after having penned 3 limericks that kind of fit together and handed it to whoever was talking and turned around and went to the bathroom. And the limericks went, I've been relegated to the basement, blah, 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 but there comes a time when you have to pee. And I handed it to the crowd, and the limerick was read, And from what I gather, they got a chuckle out of it, and I got relief.
One other, so we don't have that poem.
It's at home.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to be sure. The one other thing I thought as I thought about this program that I wanted to raise too, and have you all check in on. What is the oldest public art installation in Greene County? And I should say, let's define public art as it's something that you can see in a public place. It's not in somebody's private home, but it's available readily that you can go see in a public place. I want to know what the oldest one of those is.
Courthouse, I
Jed-
would imagine.
Jed raised the point, the courthouse, and I told Jerry the specific, there's a lot of art in the courthouse. As we learned that it's the centennial of that building 2 years ago. But the thing that has always jumped out to me is that fantastic ceramic frieze or seal in the floor of the rotunda. That's the cornucopia, and it's the official seal of Greene County that was done on the floor of the courthouse when it was being built in 1917 or 18. And does anybody know the story of why that was done there? You know it? Wayne, what was it?
Because
Wayne Lott,
Sellers
yeah.
won some kind of a corn contest out at World's Fair in San Francisco, 1915, and so
he, as I recall, in San Francisco at the exposition or something, it was like the World's Fair. You're right. And it was
International Exposition.
there you go.
Panama Pacific International Exposition.
And that was moved around the world in different times, but it happened to be in San Francisco. And that they had built a cornucopia out of wood out there, and it had genuine Zeller's corn flowing out of this in San Francisco. It's huge. And there's a picture of it over on the northeast wall of the courthouse rotunda of that display. And then and the courthouse was just being built, and everybody was so excited to hear about this that they built that design into the floor. And Proudfoot and Bird were the architects for the courthouse. We went through Mike Peeble, former auditor. We were on the committee that was celebrating the centennial of the courthouse, and we even had Proudfoot and Bird's successor architects who is what? Do you remember their names?
I don't remember that.
Might be Brooks, Borg, and Skiles.
Oh, I think so.
But we even had them going through all their records, and we said, so, biggest piece of art in Greene County, possibly the oldest piece of art in Greene County, this ceramic tile design in the floor. Who's the artist? We don't know. And they've gone through all of their records in the architecture firm. That's an outrage. We should know who did it. Other ancient art in the county.
Would it predate the statue of Abraham Lincoln, or maybe the same time?
I think it does predate Lincoln, because I think Lincoln happened right after the courthouse was built, wasn't it? Because I think there's a picture of the crowd, the dedication of the
I was
Lincoln.
looking at those yesterday, that was 1918 or 19.
That statue. Okay, so it's just after that. Well, there's two really notable pieces of art in the county that are right in that same time. Does anything predate that? I thought anything in one of the churches.
I have a pew made out of an altar from the Lutheran Church north of Jefferson. Anyway, the guy in Jordan made me a match and gave it to me because he owned that Lutheran Church. And it's a beautiful pew, and it's kind of wrapped over.
Actually, Roger and Hageter and Jed McGee, we were out at Greenbrier Church, which they recently have deconstructed because the church closed. So they took the building down, and we, when was that built? Do you remember?
I don't. Yeah, was gonna say, my daughter was in church in Jefferson, predates 1920, because they've all been torn down and rebuilt. But
Right.
in my mind, I think, so there would be a church in town with, might be some artifacts
Well, that-
from those churches.
Was that Green Barn 1890 something?
I think it might have been, I can still see the what do you call it, stone,
Cornerstone.
cornerstone of it has a year on it, and it's 19th century, it's 1800 something. And they had that beautiful stained glass window above the altar over there. It was a round window, which they, Greenbrier folks, donated to the museum, and it will be up, we're building a frame around it for the museum, and it'll be in one of the front windows, so.
They-
Lou.
Yeah, the Cedar Catholic Church, off Jordan. They have a country, and there, it's in the National Historic Registry, and there is a rose window.
Yes.
It is just gorgeous.
St. Joseph?
No, it's Patrick.
Patrick.
St. Patrick's
Cedar.
out west of Jordan, about 5 or 6 miles.
And they had to redo it, but it was wooden rock. They
Was it?
reclaim it and put it back in this last year. It was gorgeous.
St. Patrick's, doesn't it, was that like 1915?
I don't know how early it is.
It might even be earlier than that. I don't know.
Yeah, but this goes back to that.
Yeah.
How about up in the Peyton area, anything up that way?
I don't know.
Grand Junction? Okay, well, other notable, who else do we need to know about figures important in art in our county? Dick Kress? Give us a synopsis of Dick Kress. Who said it? Wayne? Was he? What class?
67.
Class of 67. Nick was a Vietnam veteran, a medic, right? Combat medic. And was horribly wounded over there in service, and came back and had his family here. And now he lives out in Ohio, I think.
West Coast.
West, oh, he's moved to the West Coast.
I think the last position he held here in Iowa was up at Fort Dodge, as I think he was curator of the art museum. But, yeah.
I remember stopping him after we were new in town, and I told him I wanted to have a cup of coffee with him sometime, and I said, fill me in on the arts in Greene County, who's who, because I had run into Nick, and knew he was a painter, and he sat down and he talked about Alice Nepps, but then he also talked about Christine Lohr, who was up in Jordan, and he also said, and then there was Dr. Lou Blanchfield, who he thought was important to, inspire other artists through the county. And then he jumped over and he said, you have, in music, you have Jack Oates, so important in teaching, and then I think he mentioned Carson Griffith and Chuck Radke at Grand Junction, and various music teachers, that have been and inspired a lot of people in the arts here. But let's start right there.
We're going to start with the artists. We've got pictures from the people you mentioned.
Okay, point out a Chris Lohr picture.
This is a Chris Lohr picture right here. Bought that at her auction when she was leaving, but had known Chris several years before she decided to move. We have two of these in our bedroom, and one on each side of the bedroom mirror. And the other one isn't quite like this, but they go together very well. And so that is a Chris Lohr painting.
Is Chris Lohr new to anybody in here?
Chris had a studio up in Jordan,
Right.
and also had a very controversial bout down in Merle Hay Mall, I believe it was, where there was an empty room or an empty part of Merle Hay Mall where he had statues, I believe they were. Women.
Of local,
Yeah.
Greene County women.
Yes.
Pandemic affected us all in so many ways, but one of the things it did was totally upset a great program we had scheduled for the Greene County Historical Society. Chris Lohr, and Lou, I'm going to have you describe her a little bit here, but Chris Lohr is in Middletown, Ohio, which is right next door to Oxford, Ohio, where my son Andrew is a history professor. So we were out there at Thanksgiving of 2019, and I called Chris over in Middletown, and I told her I was out there, made arrangements to go over and have coffee with her. So I got to see her new studio and her home, and it's right downtown in the middle of an old historic building in the middle of Middletown, Ohio. It's great, and she was at that point, she was in a kind of an Africa phase of her painting. She had been on several trips to different countries in Africa, and she was doing a lot of wildlife portraits of people and villages and scenic stuff. It's absolutely fantastic. And so I told her that I booked her for the Historical Society to come in May of 2020, I believe we had it set up, and we were going to have the show, have the program in Jordan. And we were on the verge of asking for support, financial support, to bring back the show, her show, Women, the sculpture show. Because the pieces are available, they'd have to be assembled in a new kind of place or whatever, but I still hope we can do that someday. And I've always been intrigued by her story, because I remember, and I think this was 25 years or more ago, I was at the Des Moines Register, and one of my colleagues, Rekha Basu, who's still there, was just new, and she found out about Chris Lohr in Jordan, Iowa, doing these sculptures of local women that were going to go on display. And Rekha came up and did a full-page story in the Register with pictures. I was so damn jealous of her. But ever since then, I've been a Chris Lohr fan. So, Lou Blanchfield, how did you know Chris Lohr? Tell us about it.
Well, Chris, I'll come up front here.
Yep, stand up.
Chris, I learned that Chris was an artist who moved to Jordan, and I always dreamed that I was an artist because I always loved painting, and we never had any teachers that would teach us anything. So I found her, and she was developing the studio, the old jail in Jordan. If it ever opens up again, you gotta go see it. It is a work of art herself. She's a marble sculptor, but her hands, the pneumatic drills, ruined her hands. So now she had to change them. Now she's doing clay, and that's why she's doing this. But she needed a studio, and she needed light just right. So the lower level is just a room where she displays things. And then there's a big adjacent closet kind of thing, and she had railroad ties coming in from the outside so that they could unload her heavy marble or her clay sculptures into, and she could bring them in and work in that room. And the light, the floor.
Railroad tracks?
Railroad ties. And the flooring and the light. The floor was apricot color, and the lights were a wattage that would cost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's her best time of day to work, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So she could have one any time of day, lighted that way, and she could work in it. And she was doing all kinds of sculptures, and then she put the busts. And then the upstairs, she took the windows out and had big windows put in upstairs.
On the north side.
Yes, and a beautiful wood floor, and gracious, and then platforms around the edges, and then track lighting so she could create shadows. And that was just natural light, beautiful. And but the woman was a genius, and in that genius, she was driven to create. And so whatever she was creating, she would just volumes of it. It was marvelous. And I was taken with everything about her. I loved that woman.
Where was she from?
Well, I don't know where she was from, but she was in the Army when she met Dave, and they were in Germany when they met.
And her husband was Dave, who was from Jordan, right?
Generations of doctors.
Doctor.
Yeah.
3 generations, I think.
Yeah, were from Jordan. And anyway, I just loved her, and I said, would you ever help me paint? And she said, I'm going to ask this. I didn't do this. And she had, Alice was there, and I don't know who all the artists were, but she'd have these shocking live drawings. So she would have a nude model, and with the lights all around it, breaking it. And then she had the artist standing in a semicircle around her, and she had you paint to draw. You had this big, huge pads of newspaper and charcoal, and you would draw. She taught you to draw like you do all kind of new. You do shadows, just the shadows, just the negative pieces, and she would do a 5-second, an 8-second, and then flip it, and then she'd give you a 15-second to do something more. Then just keep flipping, and then you do this. She was so much fun. So you learn all these great skills, basic skills. And then I joined the art guild. I didn't call it guild, the art council.
Yes, I think it was
Yeah.
called the Arts Council.
And I just loved them. Diane Foster, Susan Smith. I was hoping she'd be there. But so they said, "How many can you have?" And so we put it up in the depot. And I was so proud because I had some work I could show. And we sold some. It was kind of a Sudan, so I made stationery out of it.
What's your recollection of when this was? What years?
Can't remember.
This
It's
is,
been a long time ago. Yeah, okay, so I'll take the picture. So, this was done.
Whose is this? It's yours?
Yeah, that's mine, and that's Steve Kelly Laura associated with it. So anyway, the reason for this thing, so I have all these paintings and everything, and my artist friends didn't say very much about my painting. And so Diane Foster said she'd been a teacher. After everybody's gone, they're still cleaning up. I said, Diane, talking about my painting. And I said, what would you do differently? What's missing? Just a little bit of having shadows. And it was just kind of sketchy. And so I said, I need to know how to paint shadows. And she said, you come up to the studio. And so I got to go upstairs in her studio. She was working on a piece over here. And she set up this drag over the going. And she arranged her lights so that there were shadows. She said, just look at it for 20 minutes and see where the shadows are and what color they are. And then she opened up her traditions and on the really beautiful. And she said, here's your palette. You start with some of those colors until you get colors. And then you just pick what you see. And you start with the background. And she never told you what to do, where to do it, anything. She said, and she helped me with these shadows. So isn't that just so much fun? And it was like a head start on everything I ever did.
I think this was in the 90s.
I think so too.
I'm
Early
thinking it
90s.
was early to mid 90s.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Later.
it does.
Well, what? Tina, you were living. You lived up there.
Yeah.
And Tina, what did people around the Jordan area think of her?
Well,
when
they were a
all-
little shocked because she had all these nudes in the bank, you know. She was painting local people.
It was an old
And
bank building.
we tried to guess who it was. I remember they like, really?
She was bigger than mine. And you know when you're big like that, it's hard to, it could be intimidating. But I wasn't intimidated by her at all. I just loved it. So anyway, so this was a great treasure, and I haven't insured for a huge amount of money just because you can't replicate it because I think it's scary in Chris's studio.
I know in recent years. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go to her in a minute. In recent years, I know there's a group of Jordan older fellows who have been copying in Chris's building.
Yes.
They have a key to go in and have
Yeah.
coffee there. Because when I was in Ohio with her, she had gotten a thank you card from them and they had all signed in. She was real proud of that and showed up. I also saw there's a bust, you know, a head and shoulders kind of a thing of, did we say Joe Hunt, who was a banker?
Yeah.
And it was really well done. I mean, really well done. And I said, tell me about this. And she said she had done busts like that. She estimated 40 or 50 of them of people in Jordan. And she either sold them to them or gave them to them. And she said, to tell you the truth, I don't know why I still have this. She said, I sell it in a minute or give it to the family or whatever. So, but what a remarkable thing to have happened right here in the county. I mean, it's really amazing. Her show on women, and how many pieces do you think that was, Lou? Was it 20?
I don't think 20, but close. Between 15 and 20.
Roger
About a
said,
dozen.
Yeah.
were you ever in those art classes?
Oh, there was so much fun.
But that show was when she first staged it in kind of around Jordan. There were statues in fields and front yards, and people came from all over to see this. And then it moved on, it was at the Blandon for some time in Fort Dodge. And then I believe it was at Jocelyn Art Museum in Omaha, and it had a good show over there. And then they moved, I think then soon after that, they moved to Japan, if I'm right. Was David still in, did he go back in the military?
He was working, I think he was working from the Omaha, University of Omaha's,
Yeah, through the medical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was in
Yeah.
internals, yeah.
yeah. but then he
Well, certainly, having her as a Greene County citizen for a long time is amazing. Okay,
Diane Foster.
tell us, Jerry.
Well, she was a long-time art teacher here and did a lot of work. And in fact, I think she might have even been a curator at one time or been up to Blandon, or at least had a show out there. And she had a wide variety of pictures. My wife knows more about her than I do, as they were personal friends, and went over after she passed and had an opportunity. She had some small pictures, didn't she? Have small pictures and then got some bigger ones of the same thing. So Diane had quite a following too. She was, in fact, was the teacher for Holly's daughter.
Diane's son, Nick Foster, is on the board of the Historical Society. Holly, tell us more about her. Well, tell us the time period of when she lived.
Oh, gosh, I'm trying to think when she passed away.
And she went back, she raised her family, and then went back to school and got her degree. And she started in Spain.
She was really remarkable.
Started teaching in Spain. Was she a person from here?
Yes. Yes, they have a family farm. The family, where Nick has his session meeting is her family farm.
Oh, okay. But describe her.
Oh, she was really a classy person and a wonderful poet. Oh my gosh, we loved her poetry, and along with her art. And this was a series. I think there were three women that she did, and she just called it The Woman in the Red Hat, but it spoke to me, and I just had to have it. In fact, I bought a second one to give to my daughter. But Diane was, when we would have when the coven would meet.
Can you say the full name of the coven? The coven, if you don't know, was the Women's Poetry Group. You remember the full name?
We just called ourselves the coven.
The coven.
It was something, yeah, it was more intimidating than just coven. It was the coven something. But go ahead.
Okay, well, I just have to say, when you talk about Alice Nips, when they first started meeting, they met at her old building there by the railroad tracks, and there was no electricity, and the trains went through like every 15 minutes, and so we would go, and it was full of old furniture, and we had candles, and that's kind of how we got the name of it, because we felt like we were like doing something we weren't supposed to do. But anyway, so we would be reading our poetry, and every 15 minutes a train would come through, so no matter where you were in your poem, you had to stop and wait until the train got by, and then you could pick it up and continue from there. But anyway, but yeah, Diane was really a student of poetry. She liked to try different things, but she was always very, I think with her poetry like she was with her art, it came from her heart. She used her imagination, but she knew what she liked. She also did like the metal pounding, created I've got a hybrid that she did. And in fact, I've tried to find the program from her funeral, because the angel that was on it was one that she had created herself. And she was pretty eclectic. She did a lot of different things. So whatever she did really well.
I kind of forget about her poetry. She was terrific on that, but I think of her more as a visual artist. Did she teach art?
Yes.
Okay.
She,
that's probably
as
one.
Jerry alluded to, she was actually my daughter's mentor, and Shelley went to Iowa State. She was a graphic design, got her degree in graphic design, but Diane really was the one that piqued her interest and really gave her solid direction for what she wanted to do with her life. And to this day, she's still a graphic designer.
Okay, now we've mentioned Alice Nips several times. Tell us who Alice Nips was.
Well, I really didn't know her, other than just
Anybody
going.
remember her?
She was before my time. She was a sculptor.
What do you remember about her, Stephen?
Oh, her and her husband Bill was active in the Cooper community down there. Their kids went to school down there
Where?
at Cooper.
Alice Nips' kid? Or
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She went to school in Cooper.
Well, I don't know about Alice.
Oh, okay.
No,
But their kids.
No, Alice would have been up there in Jefferson Street. Cause she was a Carmen.
Alice
Yeah,
Carmen
that's
Nitz.
right. She's Bob Carmen's sister.
She was
Oh,
a
really?
Carmen.
And how did she, do we have any idea how she got into art? And was she an artist herself?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah. She was
Sculptress?
just, she was just natural.
He went to a sculpting school in New Mexico, Arizona, every year for 15, 20 years.
And did she teach? Did,
Yeah, she was a real organizer in town here at the time. I was kind of new on this in the early 80s. I remember her going over to her house with a group of so-called artists, you know, talking about things and showing stuff. And she lived in a brick house just south of the South Grade School.
Lion Street.
And then she bought or used the trampoline thing,
One of her,
Picadoo thing.
one of her most notable sculptors, when they were bronze, not
whoa.
they were bronze. And
Some
that's
of
when
Roger's work.
When she went to the south, that's what she did with four bronze pieces. And one of the most notable ones is Samantha Mouse,
Yep.
the ballet, a local girl, whose father's a doctor. Not this tall, but a ballerina. And everybody's seen that. I don't know who owns it today, but
Who does own it? Anybody know?
it was fantastic.
And the girl was, what was her name?
Samantha Mouse.
Samantha Noss? Noss.
K-N-O-S-T.
She
Noss.
lives in
Alice
Grand
is
Ocean.
She did Western.
Yeah.
She did news.
A lot of horses, but bronze, Ford bronze.
But I remember being your organizer in town a little bit of artists. We had several shows out of the, I'm getting in that building, I don't know what to call it. And I remember having stuff up on the third floor and she had several art shows and things like that. So at the time, I remember her being kind of an organizer in town. We had an art, not guild, but an art council back at that time that we did some stuff. Not nearly as involved as we are now with that kind of stuff.
But she'd create these sculptures in clay, with knife carving, like horses and things, and that's what she used to pour the mold to do the bronze. She did that all in New Mexico or Arizona.
Which makes me think of sculptors working in metal. David Williamson, who grew up here and now is at his studio and home over by Ogden. Anybody been there? I've not been there, but it's called Rancho Weirdo. And he's just done Arch Alley with lots of involvement from the community. But he also did that wonderful sculpture that's on the front of the public library here in Jefferson.
50 years ago.
50 years ago. It's a real mystical kind of theme on it, and I mean, you talk about different from anybody else's library to have that piece of art out there. And it was on the cover of Picture Magazine, Des Moines Register, I remember when he completed it. That's a remarkable thing. He's dedicated his whole life to art. I mean, he really has various weirdo forms sometimes, including poetry. I've heard him recite, and the guy is amazing.
Well, and going back to that press, Nick wrote a lot of poetry also.
Yeah.
I think that could just kind of go together.
David has a special place at his ranch to write for music. And it's sort of a miniature version of a circus show.
Miniature version.
Of a circus show. It is colorful, blue, pink, yellow, green, and it's a little wagon, and that's his hideaway. Air conditioned, lighted, heated, that's what he goes on to recline and meditate. And it's typical David. And if you've seen his house, everything in his house is metal. The stairway, kitchen table, the chairs, closets, almost everything in the house is welded metal.
And he's probably, statewide at least, probably best known for his work on taking scrap from the river recovery programs and then building it, like the DNR building in the state fairgrounds. Those gates he built on there, they're just wonderful. And he's done that with scrap metal he's recovered. He really is a remarkable artist when you think about it. Okay, we need a poem. We've got 30 minutes in this. Who's going to do a poem?
This is what you might have been thinking of. This is something we wrote for First United
Yes, the First United Coven of Greene County was the proper name of the group. 2003, 2014, thereabouts. Actually, we had it was Tina Tolliver, Tori Riley, Nancy Hanneman, Karen Vogey Perkins, Mickey Schwarzkopf, and others.
Mar Smith.
Colleen O'Brien. Mar Smith was involved. Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's have a poem.
I think Tina Tolliver should read a poem because she needs to publish her poems. I've told her forever that she needs to put those poems in a book, and because she is hilarious and yet deep also. So I think Tina needs to. I nominate.
Can you read a
her.
poem? Sure. Stand up if you would.
I'll stand up. I would just, where's your paint?
Well, there
I
goes
would
the
just
chair.
as soon sit in that chair. That's
Sure.
all right enough.
Right up there. You guys may have to scoot
Stand
around
up, Tina.
here.
This is my sheep showing.
I like it.
Yeah, well, my looking at the store.
That's what you like about artists in Greene County. 1 minute they're showing sheep down in the fairgrounds, and then they're up here reading poetry. That's
Yeah, and really, I didn't think I would be here, and that's why you brought all these poems, and I've not seen them for years and years and years. And I just take the copies home and see if, if that'd be all right.
Turn this way to talk to the camera.
Okay, all right. And so, I have a couple here that you'll just do quickly. Is that okay? Or you want one at a time? You tell me.
While you're warming up, tell us, how did you become a poet? How long have you written?
Oh, I don't know. I was at the Historical Center, and I think it was Lois Clark introduced me, maybe to Diane or Mar Smith, to somebody, and said they wanted to do poems. And I said, that sounds like fun. And Lois said, you would like it. And that's,
And you became one, right?
yeah, I became one.
Okay.
So, like I said, I haven't seen these all the time, but most of the things that I wrote had something to do with what I was doing back, right?
We're not gonna be able to hear you on the tape, so you need to, you want to switch chairs?
Why don't you sit down here?
Why don't you sit down here?
Okay.
And apparently I was 67 at that time, so that's a long time ago, right?
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
This has now become the poetry chair for the rest of the
Okay,
afternoon.
okay. Mom lives are all women over 67. It's a little scary to become your mom. Her steel wool, her red hands, her low voice. And I recognize habits I swore I'd avoid. They snuck up. There wasn't a choice. When I drove her car, if I needed a straw, there would be one, along with a fork. Extra napkins, a rain hat, one knee-high, a mint. On occasion, an extra large fork. I opened my console as I drove into town. Mom had been there. She foresaw my needs. She'd added 5 ink pens, a box cutter, a mint, and a half package of large zinnia seeds. James Earl Jones was there with the Gospel of Luke. Willie Nelson and friends should time fill. A glass with a light that helps read any math, a lead and an allergy pill. 8 tweezers for stray hairs that glisten in sun, $2 and change, give or take. A half-finished poem I thought I might write, and a coupon for Pillsbury cake. So I smile as I think of long forgotten things. My heart softens as I peer behind. I will need those tweezers before I get out. Thanks, Mom. You know I don't mind.
Terrific piece.
Do you want a cup or do you want me to sit down? What do you want?
Another.
This one was my granddaughter that lives in Chicago had written a poem like in 8th grade, something in English class, and she was pouting because we pinched cheeks and stuff, you know, like why are they touching us all the time? What's the deal here? And so anyway, her English teacher liked it, and so they sent a copy to me, and the name of her poem was Degraded. Okay, so it says, answer to degraded, because I wrote this after her. Let me pinch those cheeks. years, but in a few years, you will not remember how our laugh sounded or the true color of our eyes. There will be pictures, perhaps with names carefully written, but dust will return to dust, no matter how tight the vault, unless all of us cheek pinchers can live on. So we suck in the sweet smell of your youth, kiss your sweaty wet hair, revel in your innocence and growth, and pray for you when we cannot sleep. We love you fiercely. We do not pinch cheeks of a stranger's child. You are our link to Eden's tree of life, our slim chance at immortality tightly encompassed in DNA. 100 years from now, 1,000 of generations continue, we will be reborn again and again. You are not being degraded, you are being worshipped. You and your beautiful, wonderful cheeks.
Wow. Thank you, Jean. Anybody else?
Was Dorothy Wolf renowned artist?
I don't know. Tell us about Dorothy Wolf.
She went to Cornell and studied art and gave them some arms, so they would hang her picture. Anyway, I was over to Lawrence Geyser's one night. They would have been my landscape, and Lawrence brought out a portrait picture that Dorothy Wolf had painted of him. And I gotta say this, Lawrence was a staunch Democrat. Anyway, so he went and got this picture and put it in front of me. He said, "You know who that is?" And I said, "I know exactly who it is, Lawrence. It's you. Either that or Dick Cheney." That's not a very compliment.
But who was she, Wayne?
No, she was a Custer. She lived over by Goose Lake. Matt Wolf was her husband.
Does anybody else remember her? Dorothy Wolf?
Dorothy Wolf. I don't know what else to tell you about her. I don't think she studied art.
Wow. Intrigues me. We'll have to learn more about her.
There's different degrees of artists.
Oh, sure.
What's Tom Custer country? That's Tom.
Yeah.
There's really.
Dorothy Wolf. Okay, I'll remember
Holly's
that.
got a poem that's on the bike trail.
Okay. Holly, how long have you been writing?
Oh gosh, since I was in 7th grade. I had
At where? I should remember.
in Clarion.
Clarion,
I
that's
had
right.
a wonderful English teacher, and she recognized, saw something in me, and encouraged me, and that's all I needed was a little bit of encouragement, and I've been writing ever since. Good and bad. Some of us, not all that great. This is called The Soul of the Raccoon Valley River Trail, and I wrote this, I rode to Cooper all the time, and it was a particularly beautiful day, and I rode the trail, and so I came home and wrote this poem. So, Soul of the Raccoon Valley River Trail. It's the freedom of movement, the kiss of the sun, the smell of the earth. It's the mist rising from the meadow, the yellow speck as a bird in flight, zips in front of you, through and beyond the dappled leaves of a sumac. The tree branches form a canopy above you, and the coolness becomes a spiritual sensation. Time stands still. Senses are fine-tuned to accept the deliciousness of nature. The smell of freshly mowed alfalfa, a calf calling for its mother. The feel when tires hit wooden slats of a bridge. Purple mulberries splashed on the trail, all lend themselves to an intimacy so profound, easy to feel but hard to explain. The trail of adventure and the mystery of what lies ahead belong to the rider alone. Whatever is provided by the trail along the way is a gift that others share. It is a time that you can be by yourself, lose yourself, and share yourself as much or as little as you want. We are all equal here. Trails connect towns, and towns connect counties, and counties connect with other counties. Soon we are part of something much larger than ourselves, a network that embraces cooperation and speaks of pride. Riders hail other riders, perhaps stop to share their experiences, and then continue on. At the end of the day, we feel satisfied and at peace. Rich from the experience, we want only to do it again. To ride, to dream, to feel, to continue the connection.
Fantastic. When I was on the board of the Raccoon River Valley Trail Association, I grabbed that poem every year and go pin it up on the bulletin board over here at the start of the trail, just so people can see it, because it's just really, it really captures what that trail is all about. It's amazing. Lou,
I have a poem of Tina's that's priceless.
okay.
And I wanted to say about Chris too. You know, right in Jefferson, we have Sally's Alley with the birds, that beautiful. Well, Chris she inspired people. And she saw what Sally's wife had done with her winter. She got sick and old and had terrible arthritis. She could only stay at home. She had started taking pictures out of her house and out her window. I couldn't tell there wasn't anything between her and those beautiful birds. Yes, there it is. Sally's backyard birds. And Chris went through those pictures and Sally, we can write a book. And she made that happen. And so that's Chris Lord. Inspired people, but she was such an inspiration and help to Sally. Really fun stories there. This is Tina, and she said, I refuse to wear a red hat. Although it looks like fun, Jane Fonda needs to give it up, and admit what time is done. So what if Skin and Seggy, did I not dance in rain? So what if Skin is Seggy, did I not dance in rain? Although the joints are stiffer now, a leave will stop that pain. I'll not go quietly into the good night, I'll not nap my days away. I'll eat some fudge, I'll breathe night sky, I'll plant some seeds, then have a cry. I'll worry some, I'll call a friend, I'll buy some jeans that fit my end. I'll pray for those who make tough choices. I'll feed my soul with songs and voices. These days are mine to waste or use, and not a second will I lose. As gray pops in, I'll thrust this head, because till I die, I'll not be dead.
We have another one.
Do you want to read any of yours? Here's our books.
Yeah, pull one out, Jeff.
You've got
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, as long as he's doing that, I'll read a couple.
Okay, Lyrical Iowa is that, it's not monthly,
No.
It's yearly.
Annual.
annual?
Yeah.
But Jed McGee's had several poems published over the years. Both Robertses have. Who else
Nancy
around?
Hanneman.
Tina, have you been in there? Lyrical Iowa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lou, have you been?
I didn't apply.
Okay.
So which one do you?
Greene County Coffee Talk, I like.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Introduce it.
Well, having gone down the street from the radio station for many years to whoever owned that restaurant, it's just off the square. It's now the Junkyard. It was a place where folks congregated and solved all the problems of the world. And if you got in the way, they would, not include you in solving the problems of the world. You became a problem. So this is based on that restaurant. It's called Greene County Coffee Talk. There wasn't much agreement in the restaurant by the square. Each day the sages straggled in, opinions primed to share. Some like their coffee strong and black, and some the decaf roast. The hearty souls, the breakfast plate with bacon, eggs, and toast. Some sat at tables, some in booths, the rest on counter stools. All sat in judgment of the town, its leaders, groups, and rules. What's the latest rumor? Who did what to whom? The fire department was called where? The school board's vote is doomed. Religion, taxes, politics, the price of corn and beans. The one thing they agreed upon, they liked their to eat green.
Great job. Jed, you got one?
I have one, and this is the 2020 issue of Lyrical Iowa, their 75th anniversary edition. And I've been fortunate to be in it a number of times. And they have different categories, general poetry, humorous poetry, high school, college, national events. I usually write something about national events. And this one I wrote after the funeral for George H.W. Bush. And we've seen his house at Kennebunk Fort, Maine. And by the driveway is a large stone that has the letter C-A-V-U. And that's a pilot's phrase, which means ceiling and visibility unlimited. And the most favorite thing for any pilot to hear is C-A-V-U, so you can take off forever. So that's what I wrote this about. And I labeled it a tribute to George H.W. Bush, C-A-V-U. And part of the inspiration was, there was a picture in the paper after his funeral. A 2-year-old boy had cancer, had a bald head. George Bush, the first met him, shaved his head, and there was a picture of the two of them, which I thought was pretty touching. So that's how it started. There's a photograph. 80-year-old war veteran, 2-year-old child. Wide grins, smooth shaved head, both touched by leukemia. A noted public figure showing love and sympathy through a shared trauma. The last warrior president, number 41. A kind, gentle patriot, paragon of kindness and humility, who lived a life of honor and service. A leader who, without gloating, faced down tyranny and watched a dividing wall come down. The greatest generation has shrunk once more. We love you too, Mr. President. Godspeed. C-A-V-U.
Oh, fantastic. I never think of myself as a poet, although one of the first things I ever wrote was a brilliant piece of verse when I was about 10 years old, and the Milwaukee Braves had just been knocked off in the World Series by the New York Yankees, and I remember writing a poem about this. It was for school, and the teacher used it for a long time afterwards. For what purpose, I don't know. But the poem ended up saying, "But I'll pay my debts and won't shed a tear because I'll get it back from those suckers next year." You could only tell this was going to be big time poetry coming out of me. But one time I roamed, for those of you who don't know, I wrote for the Des Moines Register for a long, long time, roamed all over Iowa and got to meet all kinds of interesting people. It was a great job. And when there was a place that I didn't know very well, I'd go show up and I'd spend 3 or 4 days knocking around town and visiting people, and it always produced good columns, fun columns anyway. So I didn't know anything about Davenport. And so I went over to Davenport and I started meeting people, and I very quickly learned that the biggest guy in Davenport was named V.O. Figge. And there's a museum, the Figge Art Museum in Davenport, but he was the chairman and president of the Davenport Bank and Trust, which was this huge bank in a skyscraper on the riverbank in Davenport. And he was a first-class curmudgeon. He would, people who knew him well thought he was the biggest, thought he was the most kind, genteel person they'd ever known. But everybody else didn't get to know V.O. Figge, and so they thought he was kind of a curmudgeon. And so they said he would never submit to interviews from the press, and because he just didn't have time to talk to unstained ragamuffins like me. And so, but once a year he'd buy a page in the Davenport Times Democrat, and he would, or Quad City Times it became, and he would hold forth on that page telling you what he thought of the town, the world, people, anything he wanted to say, he'd say right there. And that was his only public contact, really. So I go over there to meet everybody in Davenport, and I decide, well, I gotta meet V.O. Figge. So I put on a coat and tie, and I walked in the bank one morning, and he sat at a desk on an elevated platform. The teller cages were here, and his desk was up here on an elevated platform. And out in front of him was his secretary, whose nickname was Bubbles. And I heard about her too. So I walked up to Bubbles, and I put down my business card, and I said, "Ma'am, I'm Chuck Offenburger from the Des Moines Register. I'm spending a few days getting to know who's who in Davenport and writing columns about it. And I'd like to speak to Mr. Figge." And she said, "Oh, well, Mr. Figge wants to see you. he doesn't speak to press. And I said, I've heard that. I said, but I think he ought to speak to me. And she said, well, he won't speak to you. And I said, well, if that's his decision that he won't speak to me, that's fine. I'll honor that. But I'm not leaving until he tells me, personally, that he's not speaking to me. And she said, well, he won't. And I said, I'm not leaving until he says he won't speak to me. And so she gets up and takes my business card, and takes about 3 steps back, and hands it to me with this whisper in his ear, and like this, and he looks up at me and he goes, and I said, thank you, Mr. Biggie, I'll be going. And so I just walked out of the bank. So I went back to the motel and I wrote this poem to wind up my column. And it was that no discussion of the upper crust here would be complete without mention of the venerable and still very active V.O. Figge, 80 years old at this time in 1981, and everybody describing him as there's just no one like him. He's built up great trust in the community. He's saved Davenport over and over with his financial genius. He's a great community hero. And I said, one of his past dinner partners described Figge as a total charmer. However, he has spent little charm over the years on reporters who consider him something of a curmudgeon. So let's salute him this way. And this is how the poem, or how the column wound up. It said, V.O. Figge, local biggie, doesn't talk to press. So for more about this man, you'll simply have to guess. So that came out in the morning. I had lunch that day with Hortense Finch, who taught everybody English in Davenport School History. And Miss Finch had been to dinner with Figge the night that came out. And she said, I have a message for you from Mr. Figge. So, and I said, oh, really? What's the message? She said, he liked it. Well, do we have any other art business to take care of? I'm very pleased to learn about Dorothy Wolfe and about Stephen help me, who was Alice Mipps is more about her. Chris.
I did find where Samantha's sculpture is. She tried to buy it at Alice's sale and Carmen's outbid her. So they have it.
But is that one of Alice's, I understand this correctly, it's probably one of her most noted pieces?
Yes.
I think we need to talk about authors.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
We got tons of books here.
Yeah, you should take time to see this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I gave a call thinking to Jane Millard, the librarian here. And I think maybe she answered my call because I'm on the library board. But anyway, she was a lot of help. And she'll be a lot of help to you too. But I thought, 3 or 4, big time authors, and I thought of the Moraines, and I thought of Chuck, and there's over 40 some authors that have published books.
From Greene County.
From Greene County. And Jane has put together, can we lift this? So what I'm saying is, talk about a wealth of information for all of us. Here are Greene County authors, and Jane has put this together. And I'm looking at it upside down, but it is a beautiful collection. 45 authors, over 100 books. And this was in 2017. So we have to assume that there's probably close to 50 books now, or 50 authors, and maybe 100 and some books.
Look at that where your hand is, upper one.
Oh, there's
Roger.
Roger. I'm not seeing it. So there's Roger's book on golf.
We're the proud owners of that book.
Yeah, I am too.
Me too.
Me too.
The
100 times.
Jane Millard and one of her associates at the library, I can't remember who it was. Terry Clark.
Yeah.
They did a historical program over at Scranton, and it must have been in 2017, on the authors of Greene County, and it was a fantastic program. I think we have video of that at the museum.
Just go through all of
They
these.
told great stories about all these authors. Really amazing. So the one other question I had as we thought about history of the arts, actually barely touched music except the mention of Jack Oates, and the richness of the musical culture here is much, much deeper than that. But I thought of poems, and I thought, has anybody ever written a poem about the Greene County Fair? You know? Okay, maybe we'll have to inspire somebody to get on that.
It's a great idea, though.
Can I say something before I forget? This fall, the museum, the Historical Society, is sponsoring a poet and artist get-together. Right now, I'm having 10 or 12 artists develop pictures. I've already got a basket, painting, drawing, sculpture, a bunch. I've got 12 different people, and when they get done, then Jed has only got 10 or 12 poets. And we're going to give that art piece to a poet, and they're going to write a poem about that.
Excellent.
And in reverse, next year, then the poet's going to write a poem and give it to an artist, and they're going to do an art piece about that poem.
When do you plan on launching this?
It's like, well, we've already got all the artists lined up, but it's going to be October 9th or something like that.
August, the artworks are done, and October, the poems will be done, and then a launch in November.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, it'll be displayed.
And we did this about 10 years ago. I was part of it about 10 years ago. That I did a painting. And,
That was out here in the
No, we-
depot, was it?
oh, maybe it wasn't a depot.
Yeah,
Yes, it was an eagle.
yeah.
And Roger discovered there's a name for this
Yeah,
process.
I wish I had said that because I can't remember the name.
Ekphrasis.
Traces.
And some of the writers, my writers are here
Yeah.
today.
So
Wow.
that's something. It was fun back then. I hope it'll be fun this time.
Roger, I'm going to have you wind this up by thinking and telling us you are not only an artist yourself, have painted a lot, have done fantastic stuff with woodwork. Is that a piece right over there?
Yeah.
We've got some of that hanging on our walls at home. But you are an academic, and you've studied art, and you've been around a lot of artists over your life. What is your evaluation of the art scene, including all types, in Greene County? What's your take on it?
Well, when people say this, recently, in recent years, have been telling us, I have people that, from Iowa, that say, Greene County, we hear about Greene County all the time because rooftop art, or because of the alleys, or because of something else happens. And I really think that Greene County is kind of a leader in Iowa with an art that, I don't know how else to say it. I think we've got several groups that do it. We've got a lot of people that are involved. I just think it's one thing though to do it and to maintain it and keep it going. And so we need to get with everybody. We need to get younger people involved, more people involved to be doing the whole thing. But I think we've done a lot of stuff. There's a lot of murals around town. We just had that one huge mural go up on the rooftop art thing, and there's always something going on.
We can't forget Robbie.
And Robbie,
He's writing musicals, he's writing plays all the time, and he's producing them and bringing people all together, and that's a real gem.
Well, I think we do a pretty good job of celebrating it. We could do better, and we really should be conscious of that. It's a great promotion. It really draws people from all over when you display or have performances. People love it.
So I'll talk about Arch Alley that just got completed.
Yeah.
Well, it's 99% done, still some planners to go in.
Lou, you got your hand up?
I wonder who did the peonies on the King Garden?
this the brother-in-law. And we're kind of talking into doing one on the roof, continuation of the wall.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
On the roof.
Dale Hanlon, did you have your hand
I
up?
was going to say the same thing at Peony. That west wall, the outside of Peony is beautiful.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Great painting. Great painting.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you all for coming and joining in this discussion. I think we've learned a lot here today, and it's exciting to think about the number and quality of artists that we have in this county. It really is something. And we're better to gather and discuss it than right here at the Greene County Fair. So,
One more thing, sorry. If you haven't been into Home State Bank yet, go in and look at their mural, Home State Bank.
Yes.
It's fantastic. small part of that. But also Homestay Bank over the years has provided, I've been the curator to bring in artists to display in a Homestay Bank that have the space for us, and then we'll continue to keep the space for us to have local artists show their stuff in a Homestay Bank. So there's another thing. You know, I bet a lot of towns don't have it. Somebody.
And main sponsor for the Alice.
Yes.
Yeah, they've really been great supporters of the arts, for sure. Well, thank you all. We want to thank Carson Roberts for videotaping this, and we'll have this available for watching soon. So thank you all. We'll end it there.